Hello, everyone. Tonight, not in the vague and generous sense of soon that reading titles sometimes use when the actual timing is uncertain or when soon means somewhere in the general proximity of the near future, rather than in the specific and immediate sense of this night, the one that follows this day, the one that you will be in before 24 hours have passed. From the moment you are reading this tonight, in that specific sense, and I need you to feel what that word actually means. When it is used with the full intention of meaning exactly what it says, rather than as a dramatic device that creates urgency without actual specificity behind it. Because what I am reading right now is not general, and it is not soon in the comfortable and elastic sense. It is specific and proximate in the way that tonight is always specific and proximate, when it is the actual tonight rather than the placeholder tonight that some readings use when they do not know the actual timing but want to convey urgency. Welcome, and stay with me for every word of this, because what I am about to describe deserves your full presence for the full length of the describing. I want to start by talking about what forever means. In the phrase, your life changes forever, because forever is another word that can be used in ways that are more dramatic than accurate, and I want to use it accurately here rather than dramatically, even though what I am describing is dramatic enough to deserve the word in its full and accurate form. Forever in the phrase, your life changes forever, does not mean that what arrives tonight is itself permanent, or that the specific form it takes will be unchanged for the rest of your life, or that what is about to happen produces a fixed and immovable result. That does not itself develop and change over the time that follows. Forever means that after tonight, the life you are living is no longer the same life that you were living before tonight, in the specific and significant way of a life that has been joined by something new that was not there before, and that changes what was there before by joining it in the way that the presence of something new always changes the nature of everything it joins simply by being there. After tonight, what was there before tonight is no longer alone in your life in the configuration it was in before what is arriving tonight arrived, and that joining of what was there with what is now joining it is what forever refers to, because once something has joined your life at the level of what is arriving tonight, the life before the joining is no longer fully available as the life you are living. The life you are living is now the one that includes what joined it. And that inclusion is permanent in the specific and real sense that the word forever deserves. Now I want to describe the massive changes, because massive is the word in the title that I have given the least attention to so far. And that deserves its full and specific treatment. Before I describe what is actually changing, so that you understand why massive is the right word for what is happening in your reading right now, massive changes are not the same as many changes, or large changes, or even dramatic changes, in the way those words are sometimes used interchangeably with massive, as if they are describing the same quality of change when they are not. Massive changes are changes that affect the fundamental architecture of how your life is structured, rather than changes that affect a particular room within an architecture that remains fundamentally the same. Before and after the particular room has changed, what is changing tonight is not a room, it is the architecture. In the specific sense of the foundational structure of what your daily experience is organized around, and what your sense of self in your own life is oriented toward, and what the forward movement of your life is pointed at. All three of those are shifting tonight in ways that will be visible in the days and weeks and months that follow, as the full implications of what happens tonight become clear in the lived experience of a life that has been architecturally changed rather than only room by room adjusted. Before I describe each of the three changes specifically, I want to say something about the preceding season that produced the person who is now arriving at tonight as the person the season was building for exactly this. The preceding season was demanding in the specific and personal form of whatever it required of you. In terms of patience or persistence, or the particular discipline of continuing to do what needed to be done when the doing was not being rewarded visibly or confirmed as the right approach by the kind of evidence that would have made continuing feel more obviously correct than it sometimes felt in the absence of that evidence. And the preceding season was also teaching in the specific and sometimes uncomfortable way that demanding seasons teach when you are fully inside them and cannot yet see what is being learned or what the learning is producing in terms of the version of you that emerges from the other side of the season, with everything the season put into you as part of the curriculum of the specific period of your life that it represented. What you learned in the preceding season is now in you as the specific capacity to receive and hold and navigate what is arriving tonight in the massive and forever form. That would have been more difficult to receive and hold and navigate if the preceding season had not done its work in the form it did it on the person you were becoming. For the person you now are arriving at tonight, ready. In the three architectural dimensions I described, because I think you deserve the specific description rather than only the general claim that everything changes tonight, which, while accurate, is not useful on its own, without the specific content of what everything refers to in your specific situation. The first architectural change is in what your daily experience is organized around. which has been, for the period that preceded this one, organized primarily around what was missing or constrained, or not yet available in the form you were hoping for, rather than around what was present and good and sufficient in the form it was actually in. Not because you were ungrateful or failing to appreciate what you had, but because the specific absence or the specific constraint was large enough in your daily experience to occupy more of your awareness than is comfortable in the specific way that large absences do when they are real and felt and not yet resolved by the arrival of what was absent in the form it was needed. What was absent or constrained is arriving tonight, and its arrival reorganizes what your daily experience is organized around, from the absence of what is now arriving to the presence of what has arrived, which is an architectural change in the most fundamental sense of what your daily life is structured around. The second architectural change is in what your sense of self in your own life is oriented toward, which is perhaps the most significant of the three changes, because the self's orientation is what determines the direction of every other aspect of a life. That is organized around the self's sense of what it is moving toward and why, and what it will feel like to arrive. Your self's orientation has been toward something specific that was not yet fully available. In the season that preceded this one, and that provided the organizing direction of the self's movement through the preceding season as the thing being worked toward and hoped for and moving in the direction of what was being moved toward has been arrived at or is arriving tonight in the form that the movement was always going to produce when the arrival was finally ready, and the self, having arrived at what it was moving toward, is now free to orient towards something new or to more fully inhabit what has been arrived at, rather than continuing to move toward it from the distance of something not yet reached. That shift from moving toward to inhabiting is the second architectural change, and it is massive in the specific way that the difference between the experience of approaching something and the experience of being in it is always massive. Even when the approaching and the being in it look very similar from outside, to anyone who cannot see the internal shift of a self that has arrived, rather than continuing to move toward the third architectural change is in what the forward movement of your life is pointed at after tonight compared to what it was pointed at before tonight. The forward movement before tonight was pointed at arrival, at the specific and hoped for arrival of something that was not yet here, and that the forward movement was organized around arriving at rather than organized around what to do with what has been arrived at. After tonight, the forward movement is pointed at building from the foundation that the arrival has now established in the real and present form of something that is now here, rather than something that is still being moved toward. Building is a different orientation than arriving, and the shift from the arriving orientation to the building orientation is the third architectural change that tonight is producing in the fundamental structure of how your life is organized and what it is organized around and what it is moving toward. I want to speak now about the shocking quality that the title also names, because shocking is doing something specific in the description of what is arriving tonight, and I want to honor it with the specific attention it deserves. Shocking does not mean bad. I want to say that clearly, because shocking and bad are sometimes assumed to be connected in the way that surprises and disruptions are sometimes assumed to be connected when they are not intrinsically or necessarily, as if the only things that surprise are things that harm, when in fact the most powerful surprises are often the ones that produce good things rather than difficult ones. The shocking quality of what is arriving tonight is the shocking of the expected, the disruption of the particular narrative that has been the operating story of your life in the season that preceded this one, by the arrival of something that does not fit the narrative that was operating, and that therefore, in the moment of its arrival, reveals the narrative as the limited story it was always going to be revealed as. When something arrived that exceeded its capacity to contain what was actually possible. What is possible is exceeding what the narrative was allowing for. Tonight, in the shocking form of something arriving, that reveals the narrative as smaller than what your actual life is, and has always been capable of containing. That is the shock of seeing in the real and concrete form of what is arriving, that what you thought was possible was smaller than what is actually possible, and that the actual possible is arriving tonight in the form that reveals the gap between the narrative and the reality of your actual life and what it has been building toward all along. I want to speak about the narrative for a moment because I think it is worth understanding what narrative is being exceeded tonight and why it was the operating story for as long as it was before tonight revealed it as too small. The narrative that is being exceeded is the narrative of the constrained version of your own possibilities. That the preceding season, in its demanding and sometimes discouraging form, allowed to operate as the dominant story of what was likely and what was available and what was reasonable to hope for, given what the evidence of the season was providing. The constrained narrative was always a temporary operating system, not the permanent truth of your life. And what arrives tonight is the event that reveals its temporariness by exceeding it in the specific and visible form of something arriving that the constrained narrative said was not available, or not likely, or not yet ready for someone in your specific circumstances. The constrained narrative was wrong, and tonight is when it becomes undeniably visible that it was wrong in the specific and concrete form of something arriving that the constrained narrative said was not coming. The shock of tonight is the shock of a narrative being revealed as smaller than the life it was trying to contain, and the life reasserting its actual size in the form of tonight's arrivals into tonight. As the hours between now and then move through their ordinary texture, before the extraordinary quality of tonight makes itself known in the specific form it takes, when it arrives, the thing to carry is openness in the full and active sense of someone who has been told that something significant is coming and who has chosen to meet that something in the most open and receptive form available, rather than in the defended and managed form that ordinary life sometimes requires as protection against the ordinary things that arrive without announcement and that must be navigated without preparation. You have preparation in the form of this message, and the preparation is for openness, not for defense or management or the organized receiving of something that has been anticipated in a specific form that must now be confirmed or disconfirmed by whatever actually arrives in the place of what was anticipated. I also want to say something about the people around you and what tonight means for them, because massive changes do not only affect the person at the center of them, they ripple into the lives of the people in the orbit of the person at the center in ways that are not always anticipated or comfortable. For everyone in the orbit, some of the people in your life will receive tonight's changes with you in the shared form of something good happening to someone they care about and wanting the good thing to be as fully good as it can be. For the person they care about, and some of the people in your life will receive tonight's changes with more complexity in the particular way that other people's significant changes produce complexity in people who are themselves in a particular relationship with change or with the specific form that your change is taking, or with what your change says about what is possible. For people in your general circumstances, which may produce something in them about their own circumstances and what is possible within them, that the witnessing of your change has activated. Be generous with both kinds of people In the period after tonight, when the ripples of the massive changes have reached everyone in your orbit and produced whatever they produce, in each of them, in proportion to who they are and what the change means to them in the specific context of their own lives, tonight is yours. And what comes after tonight is also yours, including the generosity of sharing what tonight produced with the people who were present for the seasons that led to it. In whatever form sharing it is natural and right for the specific people, and the specific relationships and the specific changes that tonight is delivering. When it delivers the massive and shocking changes that are the forever quality of a night that changes everything in the architectural and fundamental way I have described tonight, your life changes forever. Not as a dramatic device, but as the accurate description of what is about to happen in the real and specific and proximate sense of tonight being the tonight it actually is. Whew. Be there for it fully in the most open form of presence available to someone who has been told that the night ahead is the one where everything changes, because it is, and you are ready in the specific and real form of someone who has done the work of the preceding season and who arrives at tonight as the person the work was producing all along for exactly this. Tonight